Hey everyone, we're going to start talking a little bit about side hustles, things we're passionate about outside of work, and all that cool stuff today. I'm waiting for Craig to join us, who is the founder of Kin. So give us just a second. Hey Jackie, how are you? We'll get Craig on Kin.
It
Good
worked.
morning.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Happy Friday.
Oh, man.
It
It's a
worked this time.
magical day.
I know. For those who joined us last time and watched us, I would say fail at this. This is a pretty exciting moment. We both have each other on camera and we're good to go. Um, so, for people that don't know what we're talking about, we wanted to start doing, we usually have Friday wrap up calls, you and I, every week, and we talk about different things in the workplace, right? So, trends and stuff that was interesting to us in the workplace, stuff that was interesting in general across our team, or just like trends we're seeing in the industry. And we thought this would be kind of cool to do live. I
Yeah.
thought that. You you were like, okay, whatever you want to do.
Well, every time we have a like a nice productive conversation that's zoomed out a little bit from, the day-to-day of
Hmm.
work, we always go, "Oh, well, we should have recorded that and posted it, or we should do like a podcast or a blog post about it or
Yep.
whatever." And so we're trying to get out in front of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is the easiest way too. I like the idea of doing things live and talking to people and letting them kind of hear about what we're finding out in the workplace. Because I think our view of the workplace is one that we hope is forward. And, we're in the business of creating better workplaces around the globe. And what we're talking about are ideas that hopefully will be able to be spread. And, small things each week that we hope people can kind of work into what they're doing every day.
Totally.
Yeah. So this week is all about being passionate about things outside of work, right? And how that affects work and the flexibility that's kind of coming into play with work, side hustles, all that good stuff. The pros, the cons, who can and can't do it, all of that good stuff. So it's really funny because last night I was just catching up on some reading, and did you see the article from Forbes talking about how women, if the future is really a female, right? If there is going to be a very like heavy feminist future, the workplace has to become more flexible to be able to accommodate that, because women in general still have the traditional role of caretaker, nurturer. You know, there's just biological reasons that say why we need more of a flexible workplace. And I thought that was really interesting because this week we published a blog that just talked about, hey, your outside focuses, whether that is exercise or a side hustle or just focusing on your family, can really positively affect how you perform in the workplace. And the more flexibility your workplace gives you, the better the ability for you to actually enjoy both aspects and both sides of things. I kind of wanted to get your take on that, though, because you have been an entrepreneur and the founder and owner of this company for not Kin, but Wham for 11 plus years. So what's your kind of take on employees doing that?
Well, I think my take is going to be more subjective. I think
Mm-hmm.
I've kind of, for the last 5 years, that I've been a cyclist, riding my bike a lot, and that's helped me get some distance from work.
Yeah.
I don't know, I don't know that it's made my work better necessarily, but it's created another way for me to build on my own identity, which is a way of saying, like, for a good 10 years, the company has kind of been my identity, and my work for the past 20 years has been what I identify myself with.
Yeah.
So having something else, which, could be family, because I have 3 kids, a wife, and all
Mm-hmm.
that obviously contributes to my identity. But we're all kind of individuals. So we all kind of create our narrative and whatnot. And cycling for me, music in the past, all these writing and all these things that I've done throughout the years have been other ways of me exploring my own identity and
Yeah.
creating an identity outside of work. And something that I've been trying to sort of voice in words for maybe a couple of years since I've been thinking about this idea is that work shouldn't be my identity anymore, you
Hmm.
know?
Yeah.
And it's so I think remote working, having a remote workplace breaks down that barrier a little bit. And what I've seen is like at my house with three kids, I have 2 out of 3 meals with the kids every day.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are away for lunch, like I'm here at home. And
Right.
so, I've gotten more of my identity out of being at home, being around, and I know that I'm contributing to the family a little bit more.
Right.
Um, in terms of like employees, I think it's great when somebody's got something else going on,
Hmm.
and this article that I read in the New York Times yesterday was getting at this, like the notion of work-life balance, or saying like it's having a side hustle or a hobby is great because it improves your work. The premise of this article yesterday was more like it's not meant to improve your work, it's meant to improve your life.
Yeah.
It's meant to get you away from work so that you're not thinking about it. So I think that there are kind of like varying definitions of what life outside of work actually means. I
Right.
was always early on in my career, when I started programming in Germany, I was a little bit miffed that the people who I was working with at the agency in Germany didn't want to be working all the time. They were
What an
like,
American viewpoint. Like to
they're
be
like
upset about
80 hour work weeks. I was like, getting vertigo and stressing out over things. And they were like, clocking out at 5 o'clock. And I was
that.
like,
Right.
man, what's going on? And there's that work to live or live to work attitude that
Hmm.
I didn't appreciate early on in my career. And now I really do. So,
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that because we have our first data scientist. Her name is Lauren. She's phenomenal, and she told us this story very early on in her employment about a friend that had gone to work. Was it like Iceland or somewhere? And the friend really wanted to make a good first impression at her job, so she was staying till 7 or 8 at night while everyone else was clocking out at 5. And she really thought, she's like, I'm just crushing it, like everyone knows that I'm such a hard worker and my work ethic is completely based around how long I'm at the office. And I think it was a couple weeks in, her boss had left her a note the next morning saying, hey, are we overwhelming you with the amount of work that we're giving you? Is there a reason why you can't complete it between the hours of 8 to 5? And, I remember when I first started, just in the tech scene in general, it was very much a how long are you online? And, well, don't stay too late, but no one's telling you to pack up and go home and be with your family. Um, to be honest with you, I don't know if I necessarily got that until I started working at WAM, of the idea that, like, hey, you need to have a happy home life in order to have a good work life and vice versa. I think it's interesting the New York Times article says that because we just I just saw this quote from Jeff Bezos over at Amazon, who said he hates the word work-life balance, and the reason why is there is no such thing. It's more of an integration, and if you have this baller job that's incredible, it's everything you've ever wanted in your entire life, but you're sacrificing a lot of time at home, and that makes you unhappy. Well, then of course you're not going to love your job because eventually you're going to be burned out, or vice versa. You have a terrible job, but you have this killer PTO plan, like 30 or 40 days a year. You're taking that time off because you have to escape your job. It's not because, oh, I want to spend time with my family. And then you're dreading the time, until you get back to work. And I think that, we're in a very precarious spot, especially the US workforce, because we're going towards burnout at incredible rates. We have kind of stopped major innovation. You're not seeing major things happen. And then, the studies that you and I have seen are 600 plus million PTO days are left on the table.
Mhm.
60 billion plus benefits dollars are totally forfeited because of this. And there's just this like missing piece where I think it goes back to your original thought was like people totally define themselves by the work that they do and not the person that they are. And the big thing that I've been saying to you over and over again and been saying to the team is like, you are not your productivity. That is not your worth. Like, you are a human being who has so much more to offer this world than just what you do at work. And I don't necessarily know if that's a popular opinion, because the first thing when you meet someone, after they know your name, well, what do you do? And I think that I've always found that question to be really, really interesting,
Yeah,
because, for us, it's kind of hard to say exactly what we do if we want to encompass who we are as a human, not just who we are as a person with a career.
totally. Um, the this fella Dominic who just put a comment in saying interesting point on the culture of work
Mm-hmm.
that other countries have. There's a little bit of like job security in other countries, and I think mainly like of Western Europe,
Mm-hmm.
where you don't necessarily have to worry day in and day out about your job.
Yeah.
And something that we talked about yesterday is this idea that when we're talking about this topic that
Mm-hmm.
comes up pretty often is like not everybody has the luxury of thinking about work flexibly.
Right.
And it depends on your organization, your company, its culture, what industry you're in. But a lot of people don't have that luxury, even within our industry. So when we think
Right.
about like engineering, you may be staffed for 60 hours a week. We try to avoid that too, but with like clients and customers and problems with technology and all of that, that it's not always easy to say I'm clocking out every day at 5:30.
Right.
So I think it depends on your role, but it also depends on the security in your industry and your own financial security. Somebody who works like gig jobs every week is not thinking like that necessarily. Like it's a popular notion to think that this contract industry of jobs that are out there, whether it's like prime delivery or Uber driving or so on and so
Mm-hmm.
forth, is a way to create like flexibility in your life. And maybe it's like, but more often than not, it's people just trying to string jobs together. They're not really thinking about this as being flexibility so
Right.
much. So it gets a little bit hard to say like flexibility is is something that everybody should enjoy. But I don't know. Defining yourself by your work is also something that might be a luxury too, you know?
Yeah. I it's interesting because here we sit, two tech executives who, are comfortable. And it's hard to not bring up the fact that we are privileged, to have
Hmm.
that ability to know a paycheck is coming, to know that our family is stable, to know all those things. I think that that does in and of itself bring flexibility, and we can't skirt around that issue. That's really important. Um, the thing that needs to happen is you really do need to bring to light that there are workplaces that are driving these notions that you have to be defined by your work. This is our best salesperson, this is our best this is our best that. And at the workplace, we're seen as workers, we're not seen as whole people necessarily, unless you're in like a workplace where that's obviously a priority. But I do think that the workplace culture that we have, especially in the United States, and I'm going to bring this up over and over again, primarily because that's where we do a lot of our research, but then more importantly, that's what we have our experience in. Um, you see it, over and over. Oh, yeah, Larry put in 80 hours last week and we couldn't believe it. And it's like, well, how does Larry's family feel? And, like, I
Larry?
don't think Larry's family's too happy about that. But yeah, I think it's interesting. The other thing, though, that I kind of want to hit on is when you do focus, outside of work, what happens? Because I have a personal story about that we've kind of been going through, and you have, your own stuff. And even with the New York Times article, I still think, it's important to talk about it. So my story is my husband and I started, doing keto and working out, and just we kind of had like this like brain fog thing going on where it was like all we could do to get through the workday, take care of the kids, and then, just kind of like hang out together on the couch. And we didn't like ourselves like that. Like we knew that there was a lot more we could give to our communities or whatever else. So after hearing about keto, we started doing it. And it was funny because it was right around the time where things really picked up at Kin too. And I could feel like my energy and my momentum for everything was just like through the roof. And I remember noticing it really when I had talked to you. This is like a new little plug for everyone. We're going to be holding an online conference in a couple of weeks talking about happiness and health in the workplace. Um, but I had wanted to do a conference for that for so long. I mean, since like last August, I'd been, running the idea by you. And I was just like, we're going to do it. And, all of a sudden there's a brief out and now you engage are working on all that stuff. I think that there is a direct correlation. And I don't know if it's necessarily focusing on something outside of work or having happiness outside of work that you can then bring into the job. I think
I,
that there is a correlation there.
yeah, there's definitely like a health thing, like when you think about diet and exercise,
Mm-hmm.
thinking that, exercise should make you more tired, but it actually, if you're not getting enough of it,
Mm-hmm.
it actually reintroduces energy to you. It changes your metabolism and all that, and
Yeah.
you feel different, feel younger, more lively,
Mm-hmm.
and you also spend that time thinking about yourself,
Yep.
you know.
Yeah.
But there's another thing that not working gets you, which is serendipity. It gets you space away from
Yep.
problems that you have at work. And I think the serendipity aspect of it is a big component to successful entrepreneurs or successful ideas.
Yeah.
Because if you're able, like you mentioned, like exercise and diet and what you have going on with John, but you're doing a bunch of other things too.
Oh
You're
yeah.
helping, you're helping on a municipal level, political level in your
Mm-hmm.
town. You're helping to get more businesses and tech people coming to your area outside of Nashville and all of that.
Yep.
And that gives you a chance to just flex your brain in a different way that, when you come back to help solve problems or look at problems or help with strategy, help our own team with their issues, you're coming in with a whole bunch of different ideas because you're doing other things and
Yeah.
you're not always so siloed with the problems that we have at Ken.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. The stuff that I do outside of work, I think directly plays into it because one, I'm completely focused on something that is semi-related to Ken in the small business aspect, but then it's completely different because I'm working with small business owners on completely different problems that have nothing to do with their employees or PTO or anything like that. The other thing is that idea of how the brain works and how we have two different modes, right? We have default mode and executive mode. Executive mode is when you are completely focused on a task, you have a to-do list in front of you, and you are just banging things out and you know exactly what is expected from you. Default mode is when you're kind of just going on autopilot and living your life, not necessarily focusing on something directly. So the best way I can describe it is a way that I think a lot of people can relate. If anyone has ever been in the shower washing their hair and they have the best, idea for a problem they had 4 days ago, or, you had an argument with someone or a heated debate and 5 hours after that has ended, you think of the best comeback, that's when your brain's in default mode. And studies show that your brain actually uses about the same amount of energy in default that it does in executive, about 90% of the energy that it would in executive. But you're tapping into a completely different side of your brain. And I think that that's interesting because that talks more about like, hey, when you get away from a problem, when you're focusing on something else entirely, your brain is still processing some things. So when you're getting away from work and you're focusing on something else, it's not necessarily, uh, you know, completely neglecting work. In fact, your brain is still thinking about it in ways that you are just not consciously aware of. And what's even more interesting to me is that, again, as a culture, I think we don't necessarily play into that because a lot of times there's employers that say, hey, if you're not in front of a computer, you're not doing work, right? Or like, why weren't you on chat? Or why weren't you doing this? Or why didn't you clock in right at 9 and right out at 5? Or, whatever it may be. But our brains are wired to work in a different way. And I think that that's really interesting.
Another thing that Dominic mentioned that we've been talking about a lot lately too is phases of our careers.
Yes.
And you reminded me of an article that I read a couple of months ago, a few months ago, about the fact that we're going to be working longer, and
Mhm.
retirement is no longer going to be what we know of as like you're out of work at 65, you've got money saved, so on and
Yeah.
so forth. Well, we're going to be living until like we're 100 years old or 105,
Yeah.
with all the innovation going on in medicine and all of that. So this article was talking about the idea that we should have mini retirements.
Yeah.
That I was like, huh. So every 5 years or so, maybe you go on sabbatical or something like that. And because you're going to be livelier, healthier, longer,
Hmm.
the traditional notion of a retirement account is there's no way that's going to last. So
Right.
you need to be looking for income in other ways. And I think, over time that's going to sort of find its way out economically and financially.
Yeah.
Um, but that's also something to consider, that you don't want to get to the end of a career at 65 and then start living your life. It's like
Yeah.
what we have is, in terms of our life and our energy and our best years, or whatever you want to call it, that's right now, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. It's so funny. John's grandfather, before he passed away, he was just a wonderful guy, and he had retired and then decided to travel the world, and it was amazing. And he has all these, adventures and stuff like that. And he took John on a lot of the trips because they would go during the summer vacations during school. And one time, I guess we got to talking about like his colleagues and what did his colleagues do when they retired. And he goes, "Well, I'll tell you what." He goes, one of my most favorite people that I worked with retired and 3 days later died. And for some reason, that has stuck with me. And it's been like a fear story, where I'm like, oh no. So the idea of like the sabbatical or the leave of absence for a certain amount of time, I think is really interesting, especially with our longer lifespans. I also think the idea of, if you don't feel comfortable doing that, just taking all of your vacation, you are entitled
Hmm.
to that. That is yours. It is
Yeah.
given to you as a benefit. The company has already budgeted for it. You are entitled to that. Like, I can't stress that enough. Using that. Also, the idea of using all of your benefits in general. I can't tell you how many times I get messages from some of my close friends that have either, recently had a baby or going to have a baby, but wonder if they should put in for that next promotion and stuff like that because of the life change. And I find that, so sad, because that is another reflection of, we're scared to use our benefits and we're scared to move forward because of our own personal circumstances. Um, and like you said, we're in the best part of our lives right now, like our 30s, 40s, 50s. This is where things are coming together, they're solidifying. We have families, we have life partners that we want to enjoy the world with. Work should allow us to do that, and it should, enhance us doing that. And we shouldn't be living life just to work. And I think that that's a big, big thing that we need to work on as a culture.
As a culture, and I think when you say culture, I think the onus is on both the workplace, the
Mm-hmm.
organization, like in our case, us, like what are our policies or our best practices as a company, as an employer, but
Yeah.
then also like you as a professional, like
Mm-hmm.
you may choose to drop out of the workforce for a couple of years and do something else that's arguably more important than working,
Yep.
because you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you come back, that's the onus is on you to make that decision
Yep.
as well, and not always depend on a for-profit business like Kin or whatever employer you're working at to make those decisions on your behalf.
Yeah.
It really is important for us as individuals to think about what work means to us and what life means to us beyond work. Someone earlier mentioned the idea that so long as you're engaged and fulfilled with your work and
Mm-hmm.
you have that alignment, we've been talking about alignment a lot at work, like finding what someone's rhythm is,
Mm-hmm.
and helping folks move to other responsibilities within the organization.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's an important one as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so, anyways, we're up
I
at
think
a
it's such
half
an
an
important.
hour.
Oh, we are. Well,
Yeah,
we're at our time. The last thing
I
I want to mention is something really cool that I think that you're doing internally, and I think people can take back and start doing. with their own employees. So Craig is a great leader, first and foremost, but Craig likes to make sure that employees feel very, not just engaged, because I feel like that's a great word, but that's also a band-aid word because it could mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. I think alignment to me feels better because alignment is, I know what the company's mission is, I know what the goals are, and I know what my part is in that. And that's a big deal. So Craig has been creating not only a company mission that the entire team can, fall back on and read and understand and know why we're making the decisions that we are and know why we're moving forward, but he has also been creating, I guess they're called like career journey maps, right? And it's kind of saying, hey, here's the personality assessments we've done with you. Here is the career assessments we've done with you. Here's what you've told us your interests are. And here's where we see those playing very heavily into what you do day to day. And here's how you are going to help us achieve the company's mission. And here's your own mission. Here's your own, things with your values baked into it. And I think that means so much more to an individual employee than just handing them a company mission and saying, here you go. Now it's like, well, I know where I am at. Like, and I know how important I am to this company because I can do this. And it doesn't take away, oh, you don't jump in occasionally to help someone out that's drowning or anything like that. But it really, really shows like your value to the company. And I think it's really nice because it's coming from the founder too, someone who's taken the time to kind of get to know everyone and their strengths and their weaknesses and has helped align them with the company mission. So that's something fantastic to do if you haven't already with your teams, is really take some time. And no, it's not a job description. It's not anything like that. There's a lot more to it.
You're just giving away our next product, Lisa.
I know, I'm sorry. That's called a teaser.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you everyone for joining us. We will post this on my page and we will post it on the Kin HR Facebook page as well. So if you don't like that, make sure to do that. We're going to try to do these weekly whenever we're in the office, both on a Friday. And if we're not, maybe like sometime during the week, we'll try to announce them earlier. But again, thanks for joining us, guys. Thanks, Craig.